Just really thank you very much for coming along and being part of the launch of my second book. What I think I'm going to do just for a few minutes is tell you about what I've written about. I think I might have told you why I wrote something last time if you were here. Anyone here last time? Yeah, look at that, dedicated audience. It's about what I've written about, which is the round, which is short for the Bob Graham Round. And that's a picture in the middle of, doesn't show on the electronic screen, that's useful. The guy in the middle is Bob Graham. So in 1932, he did this lot. And if you're familiar with the Lake District, it'll make sense. Keswick's in the middle at the top, and it's round the whole of that in a clockwise direction, 62 miles, 42 peaks, 27,000 feet, all within 24 hours. So just think about that for a minute. That's quite a lot of effort. We're going to hear and see some of the people who've done that. What is also relevant is the four little dots, the squares, are the 4 times that it comes back down to the road, and you can have support, food, drinks, and all sorts of things, and we'll come to that in just a moment. They're quite relevant. So it's in kind of 5 stages, 4 support points, and it's a circular round which we try and do in that time. This guy, Bob Graham, lived in Keswick. He was a hotelier. The building on the left there is the place that he was using as his base, and it was his habit apparently to take his guests out walking. Now that wasn't just going out walking, that was going out walking, serious walking. It was part of his training. Later on he moved to a place called Barrow House, which is now an independent hostel in the Borrowdale Valley. And that, believe it or not, is a group of his guests going out for a walk in the 30s in their kit. He's the guy in the middle in the bottom row. And he was a fairly indistinct sort of guy with a slightly quirky attitude. So if you like to take in what's on the screen there, it's just a description of him. It's a quote from the book. And it's what he wore, tennis shoes, right? Green flash equivalents for his walking, and the kit was as per in the original photographs. So it's all a bit low-key compared to what you or I might be going out with these days. But that was the guy, that was what he did. 1932, the first time. It was another 28 years before anyone had attempted and succeeded to repeat it. This is a guy called Alan Heaton, who did it in 1961. And then, a bit like the Roger Bannister breaking the 4-minute mile, people then started doing it more frequently. So the 3 guys on the right, all from the same running club, Clayton and the Moors, and it's the second one is Alan Heaton in the middle, the third one is Stan Bradshaw on the right, and the 4th one is Ken Heaton on the left. They're the next guys to repeat it. And the picture on the left is the 2 Heaton brothers and a chap called Fred Rogerson, who was one of the people who helped coordinate the early events and also publicise the fact that it was happening and make records of it. And those sort of people are a very important part of the story. I'm going to jump forward now. People from the athletic club will recognise a couple of people in this photograph. If you look far right, there's someone from Barnet. If you look in the middle, behind me and Neil Walker, there's Mike Walker. This is the support team before Neil Walker did his round in July of this year. So that's outside the Moot Hall in Keswick, and it's some of his support team. And that's just a still picture of him setting off on his round. And if we're lucky, we're going to get some action, if we're lucky.
Go on, mate. Have a great one.
That's Neil setting off in Keswick at 6 o'clock on Friday night, or Saturday night, I can't remember which night it was. 6 o'clock in the evening on his round, and off he goes. This is me just talking to some of the supporters, getting him sorted out for going off to the next legs. And that was the start of his day. A really nice evening, everything going really well. After the first leg, after 3.5 hours, this is him coming into the changeover point. Okay, if you think of it, that's just a long day's walk really. Notice what he's got in his hands. One of the things that happens is that the people at the support point get a message from one of the pacers who comes forward and says, okay, he wants a cup of tea, or he wants a bowl of porridge, or he wants something. In that case, the guy came forward and said, he wants toilet roll, okay? And he had to go and have a little expedition around the back of the bush after his first round. And on the picture on the right, you can see the table set out with all the options. And basically, the person doing the round makes sure that they know what they can eat and drink when they're getting tired and under pressure, what they need. And so the support team had to provide all that stuff. And that was my task. I was the coordinator of his support on this round. And that's after the first one. Okay, but going back in time again, one of the things that then started happening was people were finding it easy, relatively, to do 24 hours for the 42 peaks. So these guys on this chart started saying, okay, let's add some more on. And in the mid-60s, Alan Heaton went out and did 54 instead of 42. And so it goes on. Joss Naylor, some of you may well have heard of, went out and did something in the 50s. 61, beg pardon, in the 70s. And then two guys called Mark McDermott and Mark Hartell came along, and they've now done 76 and 77 peaks inside the 24-hour time. That's an incredibly impressive performance, and that's something that's been set in 1997 and has not been beaten. And it's a fantastic achievement by Mark Hartell, who's the guy on the right, bottom right. So again, this is a chap called Eric Beard up there, Joss Naylor, Mark McDermott top right on the left of the picture, and Mark Hartell down on the bottom right. And the ladies started doing the same thing. So in 77, the first ladies round was done, 42 peaks in just under the 24 hours by Jean Dawes. Another couple of ladies, Anne-Marie and Ross, came along, and then the ladies started adding more and more to it. So Anne-Marie Brindley did 58 peaks, Anne Stentiford did 62, and Nikki Spinks did 64. Again, I've interviewed both of these people in the picture, Anne Stentiford on the right, Nikki Spinks on the left. It's all in the book. I find them quite fascinating. But have another look at the kit on the right-hand side. So that's in 1994. Not exactly a modern high-priced kit, but she was a very, very, very fit and very keen lady. The one on the left is Nikki Spinks. She actually is the person who's done the fastest female time overall, 18 hours and 6 minutes. For that round that the guy did in 1932, and that's a phenomenal performance. But the one that amazes most people is this chap in the vest in the middle here, a chap called Billy Bland, 13 hours 53 minutes for that 62 miles with all that climbing in 1982. And basically no one's got near that. The next nearest ones are within about an hour. And again, I've interviewed the people who've done that, and there's all the stories about how and why. But what amuses me about that picture is the guy in the blue coat. Is he just someone who's out on the street thinking what on earth is going on? Or is he actually a photographer? He's got what may be a camera on his right hand. He may just be thinking, right, these are amazing guys, I don't know. And that's Billy Bland with the drink bottle at the end, looking reasonably fresh after he finished. And the people with him were his supporters. So these are the guys. Basically, the supporters on each leg will be carrying water and navigating and carrying any spare kit for the person. The person doing the round generally just has to do the effort. It goes all the way. The pacers may do 1 or 2 legs, and that's his pace team on the end of his round. And this is again a quote from Billy Bland from the interview I had with him. He was a fantastic bloke. And this is what he said about himself. Didn't really see himself as anything special, and didn't think he was particularly hard, but he must have been. That's a phenomenal performance, because he did it in the middle of a fell racing season. About 2 weeks beforehand, he set a fell race course record. About 3 weeks afterwards, he set another one. And these were over 20 mile plus fell races. So he wasn't just doing this, he was doing it as part of his normal racing duties, and that's a measure of the man, really, that he could do that. But there was other people who were innovators. So this is a lady called Helen Dalmantides. In 1988, she decided to dispense with all the support. She could do it on her own. Okay, she set out from the place with no support, no one at the control points, no food, no drinks, carrying everything she needed, and went all the way around on her own inside 24 hours in 1988. So that wasn't hard enough. This chap, Martin Stone, decided to do it on his own, solo, in winter conditions. And he was a bit concerned about people being worried about him, so he made a little cards that he put out at each support point saying, I've made it here. And we had a schedule of people who come along an hour or so after he was expected to get there, just to check that he was all right. And there was I think it says, do not remove. And on the back it probably says, ring this number if I've not signed it in to say I'm here, and get the rest of the people out. So again, a solo winter round by him. And the third one is another innovator, a chap called Jim Mann. Again, interviewed. Some of you will have seen Jim Mann at the track, actually. Karen, you've trained with him, okay? Some of the others might have also trained in a session with him. He's a phenomenal endurance runner. He came down to the track and we smashed him in the training session because he wasn't used to running whatever it was, 400s or 600s or something. But he has done a winter round in, I can't remember the exact time, it's something like 18 hours for a winter round where there's been snow cover and ice. And if you read the story in the book about it, it's quite an engaging and enthralling story about what he went through to do that effort in that way in 2013. And you might kind of wonder, okay, how many people do this crazy thing? Well, that's a graph over time from the early repeaters that I showed you the pictures of earlier on. And it started gradually getting more and more popular up into the late 80s. And in 89 or thereabouts was 79 or something like that. And then it had a bit of a decline. And then in 2001, no one did it. We all know why, probably. We didn't do any cross-country that year, did we? Foot and mouth, yeah. So, and what happened is also was that it took time to regenerate the interest because people weren't training for it, and it took a while for that to come back up. But it peaked again in whatever 2012 or something like that with 92, and it seems to have gone down a little bit. I haven't seen the final figures for this year, and I did this graph for my son who's a mathematician, so it shows a moving mean over 6 years in the grey line and a trend line straight through, just for him. So back again to the present. This is Neil and his brother Mike after his effort. That's a picture that shows what it's like being on your feet for 23 hours, and Neil and Mike look pretty good as well, actually. But I was supporting, I didn't have any sleep, I had to get up in the middle of the night and do his feed stations and all that sort of stuff. And we were pretty pleased with ourselves because it was a real big achievement for him. But I felt part of that by being part of his team. And that's us celebrating afterwards. But what is interesting now is that you can actually go around with a very small GPS device, a tracking device, which will track where you are. You can then see this device, if you share the URL, the address for it with your friends and supporters, and they can track your progress remotely somewhere. And that's the times for his different splits, and that's the website. So what you get is an Ordnance Survey map with the track lines on it. But unfortunately, this is someone else's, a random person. And if you know the back end of Saddleback or Glencathra, it's Great Calver, and coming off there, he's done a wobble and not done very well. That's not the end of the world, except because it's public, there's people on the forum watching this making comments about it. So there's people saying, oh, he's gone the wrong way. And if you know the area, he's come off Glencathra in the wrong way, and they're all commenting that he's not done well. And you're out there in the open, being observed for doing these efforts. But in another way, it's a really good thing for the people supporting, because I would know where he'll got to from his track, except the signal drops out, and then you worried about it, is he stopped or is the signal dropped out, and things like that. So it's a bit of a mixed blessing, really. So really, what's it like? I've said that the guys went out and it was really good weather, but in the 24 hours, Neil took nearly 24 hours to do it. 24 hours, things changed. And that's a still picture from the car park at Honest Quarry, which is one of the last changeover points. And you can see rain coming across. The guy holding the camera was having a bit of a problem. And we're sitting there waiting for them to come over the hill, hoping that they're not going to be too long. And I'll probably jump forward just slightly. And now if you can see just some people coming over the hill. So it's the guy in the sort of greeny top and the guy behind him. Neil is the second person in the dark top. And it's bitterly cold and wet. And he's been out on the fells for about 5.5 hours on his recent leg since the last support point. And he's freezing, basically. So he comes down. And the really nice thing is that in a minute you'll see a lady come out of the car park. Someone who used to look after him when he was a little kiddo. And she'd driven all the way up to the Lake District to support him. Comes out with a towel and the bridges and a bit of a hug. What you can't see is that after that he goes off to around the back of the white van. I'm out there with my table, my kettle, my cups and saucers and knives and forks and stuff, trying to slip finger with the table, getting blown over and stuff. And basically, he didn't want to know. He just wanted to get on with it and move on. So, but it's all part of the task was to do that for him. I'm just going to show you a few pictures very quickly. That's a typical support point. It's the first one. It's in the daylight. It's at dusk at 9 o'clock in the evening. Easy chairs, change of shoes, change of clothing, all sorts of things available. That's the 2 o'clock in the morning support point on the side of the road at Dunmo Raise, if anyone knows the area. That's Neil with his head torch, and that's all the stuff we provided for them. I'm trying to make porridge without spoon, and if you ever tried stirring porridge with your finger, not altogether a good idea. Luckily, the kettle hadn't boiled, so my finger survived that one, but it's how it works. And this is the very last one. It's in Newlands Valley. Neil's actually asking for a change of socks, and he was proudly putting on his athletic club vest to run in with some of his mates from the running club. And then that's the team afterwards at the end. So the guys in the orange are from his running club with his Altrincham. And that was them proudly supporting at the end. Just a few kind of random pictures from the event. Obviously, I'm not on the hill, I'm doing the supporting, but other people in the group are taking pictures. This is early on when things are good and fine. Good views at the evening, you've got nice skies, you've got good sunsets. So that's on his first night going out. Sunsets. And then that's him out in the dark, everything's done by head torch. That's the morning coming up, so there's clouds, there's a bit of a temperature inversion. Again on the top of, I'm not sure where, and that's the summit before he came down to where the video was in Honeston, and basically he was getting blown about, and that's him and his brother on the top. But you got everything, all of it, in one 24-hour period, and a lot of credit to him for doing it. So that's the sort of thing people are going through to do the round. I say the guys who do it in 13 hours are not getting quite so much of it, but a standard time, a good time is 23 hours, a very good time 20 hours, and so you get these unique people who do different things. So coming up the high street in Keswick, Neil was joined by his clubmates, some of his family, one of his friends, young kiddies, his brother supporting him. And I'm kind of asking, what's this feel like to you? And this was his quote. So he'd gone around with another guy from Scotland, the two of them were doing it together, a chap called Alan, who just said, can I come and join you? He knew him from fell racing, and that's his comment afterwards. 23 hours, 40 minutes, we walked up the steps, we shook hands and stared at each other, full of sheer delight. And I was a bit pleased as well, actually, so we had a little hug afterwards. As I say, it was one of these really great days out that I will remember. I'm sure anyone else who's on the round with him will. So just back to the book, one of the things that really pleased me was that I was able to get cover quotes from two of the giants of fell running, really. It's not in this picture, but there was a quote from Kenny and Pauline Stewart on the cover, which you'll see, and this is a quote from Joss Naylor, who I say is probably the most high-profile fell runner of the whole of the time, really. And it was just really pleasing to me to feel that he'd seen the manuscript, he'd read it, and he's prepared to state publicly that I'd produced something very special. And that just means a lot to me, really, to have that kind of feedback. I asked Richard Asquith, if anyone knows Feet in the Clouds, if he'd read the manuscript and give me a cover quote. He said, rather busy, I'll give you a non-committing quote about the round. So that's also there, is what he said. It would be nice if he said, it deserves its own Bible, and this is it. But sadly, it didn't happen that way, but nice of him to actually offer something. So, what I kind of said at the end of the last one, I think, was if you've ever felt like writing something, do go ahead and do it. It just came out of the blue for me to write a book 2 and a bit years ago, and I just went and did it. If you ever have that feeling, do explore that possibility and do it. If you want to write something, you can always write a review on Amazon. You can't stop saying these things. But seriously, it's just nice for an author to see that someone's had some kind of pleasure out of it. And what I'm going to finish with is just by saying, I've enjoyed the writing process in 2 books. I'm now way into book 3. And I pitched it to the publisher a little while ago, and they said, okay, we'll talk about it. And so I'm in the process of writing. And what it is, I've written 2 histories, basically. A history of fell running and a history of one event, Bob Going Round. I've now tried to write a biography. But it's a biography of a year. Quite strange, but 1983, the full race season, was an absolute cracking year. These two guys, John Wilde and Kenny Stewart, were bashing each other in the whole season to get the title of Fell Runner of the Year. There were 15 races. They had to do all the races to get to be champion. 15 races against each other in the year. If you look at the careers of Steve Ovett and Seb Coe, you'd be surprised how many times they raced against each other in their whole careers. The answer is 6. They only ever raced each other 6 times in their careers. And this was at the same time, in the mid-80s, when they were setting world records. And they ran in the Olympics twice in 80 and 84. And I think 2 other occasions, apart from the Olympics, they actually faced each other. So there's a real difference. But the point about these two guys is, the guy on the left is an Olympic athlete. He did the steeplechase in, I can't remember what year. He's an RAF guy, traditional athletics background, moved into fell running. The guy on the right, Kenny, is a Cumbrian. He was a gardener, a manual worker, and he came the other way. He came off the fells and ran a 2:11 marathon. So it's a really interesting contrast between two people coming together from different parts of their lives. But in that one year, in 1983, they absolutely bashed each other in the races, but were really good chums afterwards. And I've started interviewing both John Wilde and Kenny Stewart, and I've got about 20,000 words of the third book in the bag, and I'm just working on how to weave the story. I'm thinking of doing the month of each of the year of 1983 as a chapter and interspersing it with their life stories. So it's kind of a weird chronology, so that's where I'm going with it. And this is just a quote from John Wilde, which is the tentative title for the book. One of us had to come second, because they were just so good and so close to each other with the thing that it was touch and go. It was the last race of 15, where one beat the other by 1 place, that decided the championships. So that's where I'm going with my next book. I'm quite happy. The other launch in Keswick the other day, someone said you didn't ask any people want to ask any questions. So I feel obliged to say, if anyone wants to ask any questions, please do not ask me what the age of the oldest person ever to do the dog going round is, because that's what someone asked me in the informal bit afterwards, and I didn't know the answer. And that's probably why I don't know now, even though I don't ask it. But if there's anyone genuinely wants to ask a question, I'm quite happy to answer. Otherwise, thank you very much for listening.
I've got one question, Steve. Did you start to write the book before you helped Neil with his round, or was the idea there, or did it come from?
I'd actually finished the manuscript. The idea was, I said to Neil and Mike, if you do the round, it can be a kind of a part of the story. Well, they delayed doing it until it was too late. So I was actually going to use it as a kind of a case study example of my involvement, because I have no credibility. Never done the round. I've done it walking in multiple efforts, but not done the round. So I have no credibility. So it would have given me a bit more credibility, but it didn't happen that way. So yeah, it was meant to, but it didn't. So yes. What also has been raised as an idea in the running club is that it's quite an achievement to do 24 hours for that effort of 62 miles. We could, as a club, do it as a relay. We could take the 5 stages, put 2 people up for each stage, and do it as a relay. And that's something that's sort of brewing in various people's minds, which might happen, might not. Any other questions?
So you have to run it. You have to run it. Does anybody want
Okay.
Here's
Here's a fact, right? Billy Bland ran it in 13 hours 53. Later on, he went round and didn't run a single step and still did it in 24 hours. Okay, because he knew the terrain, knew his navigation, he could walk fast, but he didn't break into a run once. So it's possible to walk around in that time if you don't waste time, and you know where you're going, and you're fit, and you walk around. Most people will walk up hills and run on the tops and run down. So yeah, it's a combination really. But no, you can do it as you want. Yeah, Dave. How difficult? Yeah. Okay, Harry Griffin was an author of note who, when it happened, said anyone who was reasonably fit could do it. Most people now spend about a year training for it and practicing the individual legs. So you go out and run one leg and see how long it takes you. And then you say, okay, well, I'll run two, and I'll try two together and see how that goes. Neil, when he did his, never ran more than two legs together at any one time, but he tried them all beforehand, had a good idea of his capabilities, and as it happens, he did what he did on the day. But most people will take probably a year. But the point Billy Bland was making about he did a record in the Fellways 2 weeks before and another one 3 weeks, he didn't think you had to stop doing other stuff to do it, and he was quite disparaging about someone who said, well, I can't do that because it will ruin my season, which is a common quote from some people who've never chosen to do it. So it swings and roundabouts, but I'd say most people would tend to say, take a year, get yourself in the right place, get used to it and go and do it.
I can see the advantage of actually having done the legs beforehand. I mean, I'm just wondering about how much navigation people would generally have to do, or whether they start the challenge knowing exactly where they're going.
Well, a lot of people will know where they're going. A lot of people will have pacers who know the particular legs because they rely on doing it. A lot of people get caught out because it's not clear day when they go and they thought they could just see all the way around. There's possibly apocryphal story about a bloke from Cambridgeshire who went and did it blind without ever going there, and he trained in a car park in Cambridge on the slopes of the car park, never ran up and down hills and didn't ever go there. There's a video of him at all the summits, obviously at all the summits taking videos, and some people say maybe he didn't, but I tend to believe him because I quite like the story. Okay, in that case, thank you very much. Please do help yourself to any more drinks, soft drinks, and anyone who wants a book still signed, I'm quite happy to do that with you. Thank you very much.